Hello, everybody. Let's talk about VR, Memory Palace software, and the reasons why they really are very unlikely to improve your memory, and why that probably, even if they could, people wouldn't use them in a disciplined way that would allow them to improve your memory. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, and I look forward to your thoughts on software. And obviously, I could be very, very incorrect about these assumptions, but I don't think so, because I read Experience on Demand, What Virtual Reality Is, How It Works, and What It Can Do by Jeremy Bailenson, and pretty much convinced me that all of my assumptions about why that Memory Palace software can't work really are valid and will continue to be valid so long as the human brain is what it is. And this is important to keep in mind, that this is not just something I cooked up, but something that someone who's very, very established in the world of virtual reality has suggested. And some of it cross-indexes with Jaron Lanier's thoughts, and he's one of the people who really created, or is credited with being one of the biggest thinkers in the early days and to this day on virtual reality and so forth. So Dawn of the New Everything is a great book to read by Jaron Lanier. But you might be thinking, this Jeremy Bailenson guy, yeah, okay, so he wrote a book, Experience on Demand, What Virtual Reality Is, How It Works, and What It Can Do, and also what it can't do, which is memory palaces. Who is this guy? Well, he looks like this, and he's a professor of communication at Stanford University and founding director of the Virtual Human Interaction Lab. He studies the psychology of virtual and augmented reality, in particular how virtual experiences lead to changes in perceptions of self and others. This is very, very important about why the Memory Palace technique is very, very much not really going to be replicated, I don't think, inside of software. And his lab builds and studies systems that allow people to meet in virtual space and explores the changes in the nature of social interaction. His most recent research focuses on how virtual experiences can transform education, environmental conservation, empathy, and health, and he is the recipient of the Dean's Award for Distinguished Teaching at Stanford. So the guy might have something to say about virtual reality and how it applies to Memory Palace software. So I'll go through three of the reasons he shares that I think are the nail in the coffin, why that it's a waste of time to actually play around with memory software, play around with building Memory Palace software, except for it might not be an entire waste of time. We're going to have someone on the podcast who has designed Memory Palace software, and it's really interesting what he's trying to solve, and he might solve it. So I could be totally wrong about these things, but I want to go through what Jeremy Bailenson says in his book and really test it out with you. I want to know what you think as well. This is a live medium. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Crone Woman Walking, for your super chat. Really appreciate that. I don't know why that your comment doesn't show up on the screen when you do that, but I always appreciate your support. I'll put that up there for you. You say memory palaces are the true limitless pill. Indeed, indeed. I agree. And really appreciate always your support of the initiative from the magnetic memory method world. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And again, thank you, Chrono and Walking, for your support. And hello to Reclaiming Life. William says, have you given up all thoughts which you had for a potential app on magnetic memory method in the future, or is this live stream just about VR specific downfalls? Well, we're going to make reference to VR, but I think everything Jeremy Bailenson says in Experience on Demand applies to Memory Palace software as much as it applies to virtual reality. So we'll go through that and answer your question. I would never give it up. And when you hear the interview that's coming out on the podcast with someone who has finished a Memory Palace software that is the most likely thing I've seen to work, then I think you'll see how much free consulting I gave him based on what I've thought of, or you'll hear, better said, because we didn't do a video, we just recorded the audio. But one of the things that you'll see there is just how hopeful I am that it could work if someone can crack the code. But the code that needs to be cracked is not in the software, it's in the human. And these are their true real issues. And I don't think software can do that insofar as there is a definition of what human is. And insofar as anybody's going to change that. And, we've got millions of years of evolution, and we think that things are going to somehow change like that. Well, we might need a couple million years for anybody to change anything. Of course, there are optimizations that have come that have done things to shift how humans behave to a certain extent, but not nearly as much as one would hope or think. In any case, I'm always happy to be corrected on these things, but I wanted to bring up this book that I'd read, share with you the 3 major findings, I think, that put the nail in the coffin on this issue. And we're going to have a great session. Thanks, Dexter, for saying hello. Dan says, just restarted college after listening to some of the podcasts and Lynn Kelly's book. Excellent, Dan. What are you studying in college? Please let us know. And if you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are. And by the way, if you're watching the replay, get involved in the discussion below. Always love to see your chats. James is here. Hello, James. Thanks for the happy smiling face there. Always good to see you. And sorry I missed that a little bit earlier. Dan says, thank you for all you do. Well, thank you, Dan, and love to know more about what you're doing at college and how we can support you. Electrical engineering. All right. So I don't know that much about it, but I do know someone who's doing electrical engineering as well in the local community here who I have had the privilege to spend some time with. And it sounds like it's pretty intense. So, just dive in, let us know what we can do to support you as you go along. Jeff is here. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for your post. Thanks for joining us on the Facebook. Hey, Anthony, software requires time and is limited by the individual. For purposes of memory palaces, technology limit us because some people become technology dependent. That is an issue too. That is a problem. Thank you for sharing that. We will get into some of those issues in greater detail. And you're right. Software does require time. You're not going to escape that. Time is one of the number one memory tools that we have, and consistency, which we'll talk about. All right. So we've talked about Jeremy Bailenson, who he is and what he is. But before we get started, I want to say a big congratulations to James Gerwing because, well, he has done something that is a big accomplishment. If you don't know James Gerwing, let me introduce you to him via an email he sent me. He said, hi, Anthony, James Gerwing here. About 5 years ago, I began taking your online course and then went into some memory competitions. I'm the 4-time current undefeated and record holder of the Alberta Memory Championships. Even better, I just won the 2019 Memory Championships and the first ever Pan-Provincial Championship. Thanks for your input. Well, thank you, James, for your email. Really appreciate hearing from you. And congratulations. So everybody who cares and can type in your congratulations. Thank you so much for, using the memory techniques, and whatever I was able to contribute, I am just honored and grateful for the opportunity to have been a part of that. But you did it. You put in the work. It is that time issue. You need to put in the time if you want the output, as Jeff was saying. And so James obviously put in the time to do it, and nobody else could, right? So I like how he put it. Thanks for your input. I'd love to know more about what that input is, but the obvious point there is that it is you who put in the time. So congratulations. Really, really amazing. And I'm very inspired by that effort that you put in to do that, because I've competed, and I know that it's a very different thing than the kind of memory techniques that I use. And there's time pressures that are very, very different. There's distractions that are very, very different. And it is a very, very powerful skill that is on display when you are able to beat out all those other people, because they're fierce and they're very, very good. Adolfo is in the house. Good to hear from you, Adolfo. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. I hope you're okay with the weather where you're at. And wow, amazing. Good to see you. All right. So just as a reminder, for those of you who missed last week's video, Improve Short-Term Memory, the truth. Really appreciate everybody who saw it already and supported it with your thumbs up and your comments. If you missed it, go back, watch it. I think you'll learn a lot. There was one dude who obviously didn't watch it very much because he had nothing to do but complain about it. But in any case, if you really pay attention to the full series, and the second video is coming out soon, you'll see that you need to not get too judgmental about the first part in the series. There's exercises coming, and we need to set a foundation, a framework. Anyway, I thought that was pretty funny that one dude was like virulently angry about this video. Like, You grow up, man. Give your head a shake. I'm sure you got better things to do than type some anger about a free video on YouTube. But so it goes. I just have to laugh sometimes. Also a reminder, study hacks still coming up. You need to be on my email list in order to even be invited, and you get started at magneticmarymethod.com/YT. This program makes no sense if you haven't at least taken the free course. So make sure that you are registered so that you do get the invitation to be part of Study Hacks. All right. So let's check in with the chat, and then we'll get into Experience on Demand and its 3 pieces of, well, really considerations more than evidence that VR and memory palace software just isn't going to make the grade. So let's see here. Kirigami is in the house. Good to see you, Kirigami, again. You say it's always good to see you live. I'm currently working on your Magnetic Memory Method Toolkit. It is awesome, but I have problems visualizing some words. Also, can we put empty rooms in the memory palaces? Thanks for that. Let me know which words. Number one thing, if you want good answers, ask specific questions with specific detail. Otherwise, like some words. Which words? Which words? What are you doing? Grease the wheel a little bit here. You're not squeaky enough. I don't know what the problem is because I don't have enough data. I don't know what you mean by empty rooms in memory palaces either. So please say more. Really appreciate you asking these questions, but I want to encourage everybody to be more specific with your questions, because that's obviously got some brilliant things that we could talk about, but without specificity, what do I say? Which words? What did you do so far? What's the difficulty that you're dealing with? Nigel, good to see you, Nigel. Thanks for being here. Do you know Ramon Campayo? I know the name, and I've looked at some of his material, but beyond that, I do not know him well. So thanks for asking. And do you know him? Reclaiming Life says, is the podcast that's coming out an update about Memotopia? No, it's a new person. And as far as I know, Memotopia is not a memory palace software as such. This one is. And I really wanted to support his initiative, which is why I invited him on the show. We wound up having a very, very good discussion. And as I think you'll hear, it's something where, we challenged each other's assumptions. And who knows where that's going to go. But I think it can go to very, very good things. And I haven't given up on the app thing. But the app I want to build, just in full transparency, was quoted for $250,000. And given what I've gone and done lots and lots of research, I'm just going to talk about 3 points from one book today. I just don't think it's the real thing to tackle. I think there's other things to tackle, and I don't think that any memory palace software is actually going to get at that issue. So we've got to tackle it from a different angle. And so there might be a different software. We'll see. I'm doing lots of experiments, lots of research, and we're just sharing a little bit today. But no, we're not doing an update on Memotopia. But William, I'd be interested. Did you get Memotopia? Did you try it? If so, let me know how that software worked out. Mr. Space is in the house. Good to see you, Mr. Space, as always. Happy to see the live stream, but I'm about to have dinner, so see you soon. See you. Have a great dinner, and thanks for saying hello. I really appreciate it. Nigel asks, does diet play an important role in memory development? Absolutely. That's one of the most important high-level questions you can ask. And if you want a clear brain, a clear mind, and we're going to talk about that later today, actually, you definitely want to pay attention to your diet. It's one of the number one advantages you can give yourself, period, not only for memory, but for everything in life. And, there's all these debates and controversies about, whether this or that country should have public health, or whether I'm Canadian, so whether Canada's public system for health is superior to this, that, and the other country versus Scandinavia, et cetera, et cetera. All of these questions are irrelevant as long as people are eating junk food and not taking care of their diet in a way that actually honors what the human machine is, right? So that's probably where the focus needs to be, is regulation on garbage in food. All right, so thanks for that question. We'll talk a little bit about it more later. The first thing that I want to point out here is that this book has so many powerful questions. And the first one is, does the thing that you're trying to do with VR, and by extension, a Memory Palace app, does it need to be in virtual reality? And why is this such an important question? Well, because there's so many things. There's an infinite number of things that you could do in virtual reality. But the question that he asks, and it's a very, very good question, this is Jeremy Bailenson in Experience on Demand. Does this need to be in VR? And so when you think about that, and you look at the thousands of years of tradition of the Memory Palace, the answer is obviously no, it doesn't. We're talking about thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years that space has been used to help you remember things. So does it need to be in virtual reality? Clearly not. Now, here's the thing. What do we mean by the word virtual anyway? Aren't memory palaces always already virtual? Now, the answer is yes and no, right? And here's why. Memory palaces are based on real memory. Now, we can say, well, is the real memory of a real place that you've really visited more of a real memory than the TV show or the video game that you might use for your memory palace? Is the living room in Breaking Bad more real than the living room in your house? That's up to you. What you want to do with memory palaces and so forth. It's not really a particularly interesting question. The more interesting question is, do you get better results from your living room versus the living room in Breaking Bad or whatever series you're watching right now, Stranger Things or whatever, right? Do you get better results from Stranger Things living room or one of the living rooms that you see in that series? If so, great. If not, then go back to quote unquote more real memory palaces, right? But the whole point is that there's an extent to which memory palaces are always virtual, right? Because what is virtual? Virtual is a replication of the real thing, quote unquote, real thing. But when is anything ever real, right? Well, never. Because what you do in your brain is a chemical reproduction, a chemical interpretation of whatever could be said to be real. So as I am doing this now, I'm looking at a screen, and that screen is appearing in this brain that is being processed by these eyes, and it's got a number of interstitial points before I actually have the experience of the real, right? But what the real is, no idea what the real is. No honest intellectual answer could say, well, I'm switched on, I know the real, right? You don't, because everything is mediated. Everything goes through a number of points. And some people say that the eye actually sees the world upside down and then the brain switches it right side up. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what they say. So memory palaces are already virtual at some level, and there are considerations that matter based on your practice, where you're at in the practice, and so forth. But does a memory palace need to be in virtual reality? The answer is obviously no, because there's thousands upon thousands of years of tradition or even just natural use of space as a mnemonic and all of the tools that are associated with that. So that's point number one. And I think it is pretty much as strong as you need, right? And then we have other reasons why it shouldn't be in VR, which is that every time that you need to reproduce something in your head, you're adding another layer of cognitive load. So the argument in favor of the most real memory palace possible is that it should theoretically lighten the cognitive load, because the amount of familiarity you have reduces the amount of creating the memory palace that you need to do, theoretically. Now, is that going to be true for all people? Not necessarily. But for me, it is. For me, it's very much the case that the more I have to think about the memory palace, the harder it is, and the less likely I am going to do it, and the less I enjoy it. But the more direct it is, then the more likely I am to enjoy everything and have a lot of fun and just zip itty-doo-dah all the way through, right? And I find that that's mostly the case for a lot of people. I don't know if Adolfo is still with us, but Adolfo had made this point several times that, he was cherry picking a lot of different things, trying to skip the basics, the fundamentals, etc. And when he got down to brass tacks and just did it the way the ancients did it, bam, everything gets better. So you can say something about that if you're still with us, Adolfo. If not, then you may have heard him speak about that before. And I would concur. My experience was very, very similar to his. All right. Reclaiming Life says, let's check in with the chat. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world. And we'll get to reason number two in a minute. Why that the Memory Palace and VR software cannot and will not improve your memory, at least not as directly as just doing the fundamental ancient techniques will. And let's see here. Reclaiming Life says, I'm still waiting for Memotopia to be available on Android, so at this point in time, I can't comment on how it works for me. All right. Yeah, so I don't know where things are with that initiative, but hopefully it will be, so you can give it a try. Kirigami says, I couldn't visualize the word lethologica. I couldn't get a proper visual image for letho part, and by empty rooms, you haven't mentioned MPs need memorable objects like famous people. Can it be empty instead? All right, so you couldn't visualize the word lethologica. Great. Then, what words, why did you want to memorize that? Is that because it's in one of my videos? Do you have a pressing need to memorize it? If not, memorize words that you do have a pressing need to memorize. We'll talk about this a little bit later in today's presentation. But if you're having a problem with a word like lethologica, then you just have to start to think, do I really need to memorize this? My suggestion would be separate your wants from your needs. So yeah, I want to memorize that. Do you need to? And I mean this seriously, because there is no proper image for this. Get out of your mindset that there's a proper image. All of that there is does the image work or does it not, right? And so you could think of Jared Leto, for example. You could think of Lex Luthor, which is a little bit off kilter, but nonetheless, you could think about all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, if there's no pressing need to actually memorize the stuff, then you might be wondering. And the reason why I pick up on that is because I know that word. I know where I mentioned it, and I'm guessing that you picked it off that video. So then the question is, that's an example. Is there really something wrong with your memory, or is it the fact that you have probably zero need to actually use that that word, to know it? So that's the first thing that I would say. All right, Adolfo. Wow. Well, thank you for that. That's the most super chat I've ever seen. Thank you so much. That's a great honor and privilege. I don't know why your thing doesn't show up, but let me put that up on the screen. From Adolfo. Wow. That's a big old super chat. Thank you so much for that. We'll get your comment up on the screen in a second here. Woo! I got to take a drink after that one. Thank you so much for all that you do to support this community, and really appreciate it. That's amazing. So Adolfo says, Anthony, I just want to thank you for creating your new memory bootcamp program. The detailed breakdown of CaveCog helped me create a massive alphabet index. Thank you, Mechanic. All right. Well, so a lot of people don't know about the new bootcamp program. So I guess we have a little bit of a surprise thing, but I'm glad that it helped you so much, and that's part of the purpose of it. And the alphabet index is the next thing that we could say to Kirigami, is that you should have as many alphabet lists as you can. And the more that you have, the more you're going to be able to memorize words like lethologica on demand when you need to. So that's very, very important to have that, to be prepared. Now, I still don't know, Kirigami, what you mean by empty memory palaces, but when I say that I've mentioned memory palaces need memorable objects like famous people, I don't think that you're following the full training. I think you're piecing together a lot of stuff based on this video and that video and discussions of the way this or that person can do it, as opposed to what the magnetic memory method is. And so you might need to just pay more attention to the actual training, because there is a time, a period, a rationale for empty memory palaces. Individual rooms inside of memory palaces being empty, I don't necessarily know. But I need to know more about where you're at with the actual training. And I appreciate the question, though. It's just, it's hard to answer questions that sort of reveal a spottiness in the understanding of what the magnetic memory method is. All right. So, Reclaiming Life says, I would think that augmented reality would work better than virtual reality, but still be weaker than simply in memory palaces in the mind, since the ones fully in the mind use all the magnetic modes. Let me read that again. I would think that augmented reality would work better than virtual reality, but still be weaker than simply in memory palaces in the mind, since the ones fully in the mind use all the magnetic modes. Yeah, I would think so too. Also, augmented reality, of course, is very, very interesting, and a lot of my research has to do with augmented reality. It's it's just everything's a hydra, right? You grow one thing, and then you start to see that, well, actually it bifurcates into these other things, and then the next thing you know, you've got this massive amount of complexity, and it just is endless deviations from what you need to do. So you're right. Like it will always pale in comparison, so long as we still have natural minds, because the magnetic modes don't need the interstitial. So when Adolfo here is mentioning that the new program helped with breaking down and create the massive alphabet index, then, all of that stuff, the whole point of memory techniques is direct, boom, you got what you need. You've got the tools that you need, not any sort of step in the way. And an app or a VR augmented thing, anything like that, is actually training your brain to need a training wheel, when your brain actually already has all the training wheels that it needs. All the training wheels that it needs. So you need to train yourself to be direct. And we'll get into that a little bit more in the presentation. Adolfo says, $50 is nothing compared to all the knowledge I've been able to ingest using your teachings. Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, an honor and a privilege to serve, and especially yourself when you're so serious about this. You put in the work and you get the results. And we got to, if it's cool with you, we got to get some of your test score screenshots up on these live streams, because you've been just crushing it with your exams and what you've been doing, with your family and stuff is just so inspiring to me. And I really appreciate that you share so much of your journey as well, and that we're able to build this community together, and just keep doing it, because it's going to get better and better and better the more that you apply, the more you practice, and it's very, very important. All right, let's see here. Nigel, if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing. We got one last chat to catch up with here before we go on to the second reason why memory palaces always are better, and software versions and VR versions and augmented reality versions are just going to fail. Almost certainly. I'm not 100% certain, but pretty much certain. And then we'll carry on there. Nigel says, does math require the amount of practice as people say it needs? Math really frustrates me. Nigel, I don't know what people say about the amount of practice that math needs, but what I'll tell you is that you are you and they are they, and rather than worrying about what other people have to say, dive in and enjoy the ride and focus on you. They say stuff all the time, left, right, and center. It's shocking the amount of theys that are out there and how much people pay attention to them instead of themselves and what they can do, what they can learn. So when it comes to math, I would check out Barbara Oakley. She's been on this channel. She's been on the podcast, and she has lots to say about math that I think you'll really benefit from in terms of just what to do and how to do it, and get down to it immediately without worrying about what they say. Who cares what they say? What do you say? Say, yes, I'm going to be the best mathematics person that I can be. I'm going to find out what it is that others needed to do in order to get really good at math, and then I'm going to do it. I don't care what they say about how much practice it takes. I'm going to find out for myself how little practice it can take, because there are other people who say, wow, you can really optimize everything. You can learn the major system. You can learn the memory palace. You can get this stuff down, lickety-split. Focus on you in the mix, and don't worry about what they say. But thank you for the question, Nigel. Really appreciate it. Peter is here from LA. Good to see you, Peter. So wonderful to have you join us today. Thank you for saying hello. Really wonderful. Good to have you here. All right. Kirigami says, yes, I did see the word in your video and tried to memorize it. I don't need to memorize it. Got something to work on now. I need some rewind. Thanks for your amazing initiatives. You are awesome. Well, thank you, Kirigami. You are awesome too. And thank you for letting me know that you did see it in that video. It's just an example. Why don't you find the words that will improve your life, like today? Memorize those instead. You'll have a little bit more initiative because you actually can feel that they'll improve your life. And then you're going to get more dopamine spikes when, wow, I memorized them. And that's going to impel you to continue. So please keep going and going and going and going. And you will have a much better time at it because you're going to be able to absolutely crush it based on your own brain chemistry, because you're actually focusing on memorizing information that matters, that legitimately improves your life. You do that every single day, you will create a habit so quickly that you won't be able to sit down, put down. You'll be memorizing every day, reciting from memory every day. Basically, that's what I did. That's how I've engineered the system. I can't stop myself from showing up to work on my project because I just focus on the information that actually legitimately improves my life. So every day things get better than the day before. Right? Now, life has its ups and downs, of course. There are certain sort of things that are going to knock you off the track once in a while. However, unusually, I've been doing this now for more than 2.5 years, every single day. Haven't missed a day, even though I've sometimes missed a morning and picked it up later in the day. It's incredible, and I can't stop myself, and it's because of the production of brain chemicals that lead to habit formation that make me essentially positively addicted to memorizing what I'm memorizing. And it has everything to do with the fact that it's not stuff that I can memorize. It's stuff that actually legitimately improves my life. Will it improve your life? No idea. But I think it probably would if you wanted to memorize that stuff. The whole point is you got to find out what that is for you, start to memorize it, test that it's actually going to legitimately improve your life, and show up and memorize it for long enough so that you actually do get it into procedural memory and it starts to take on an autopilot situation where you can't stop yourself from showing up and memorizing more. That's the secret. The secret. It ain't a secret at all. It's been known forever and ever. Amen. All right. So let's see here. Reclaiming Life says, where is the new boot camp that Adolfo mentioned, able to be found or purchased? I will be announcing that very, very soon. And if you catch last replay of the Memory Dojo, you'll find a special there for you. But I appreciate you asking, but I can't quite let that out here yet right now. But that is currently just available for the mastermind people who are in the Memory Dojo. So that's there for now. And if you want, you can reach out by email as well, and I'll get you a special link while that's still there. A little bit hush-hush, but I'm so excited that it's helped Adolfo so much. And thank you again, Adolfo, for that super chat. That's massive. All right. Anyway, forgive me if I'm a little bit hush-hush because it is ready, but it's not been released yet. And I'm very, very excited to see what's going to happen when the full launch goes. Adolfo says, guys, I've invested over $2,000 in VR specifically for Memory Palace creation. Waste of time and money. The same time I wasted creating VR MPs, I could have easily created 10 times the real Memory Palaces. Thank you for sharing that, Adolfo. Yeah, I was looking for where you'd said that previously, but I'm glad you added it here. That's a lot of cash to invest and time. And the fundamentals are just so basic. They're so simple to understand and so easy and fun. And really important to just go for this. Go for the stuff that humans have used for thousands of years. All the shiny new objects out there aren't going to replace the fundamentals unless they come up with brain implants. But if you follow the link below in the description below, I give some compelling reasons why a brain implant would suck. And there's a link to the replay on Neuralink and my quibbles with why that's such a bad idea. All right, here. Let's see. Jeff says, Lethologica, a patient who has a stroke that has damage to the finicky, where language is developed in the brain. So aphasia means without, aphasia means speech disorder. Okay. I mean, I feel like I can intuit the link you're making there to Lethologica, but yeah. So Jeff says it's an idea in case he needed to know the word. That's a way to look at it. Indeed, that is a way to look at it. Ujwal is here. Thanks for being here, Ujwal. from India. Namaste, namaste, Ujwal. How to practice for remembering textbook. Well, we're not going to talk about memorizing textbooks today, except for maybe at the end. So stick around for the end if you want to repeat that question, or if you want to make it easy for yourself, put in magnetic memory method and memorize a textbook and go to my site and look at the infographic there and listen to the podcast and do what that all says. Raphael is here. Good to see you, Raphael. Hi, Anthony. I always thought of using virtual fantasy palaces like palaces in TV series, movies, video games as an alternative for my lack of real palaces to get inspired. So, by using these virtual palaces, am I sabotaging my progress? Thanks for your answer. Raphael, I would say, yes, you're sabotaging your progress by thinking about virtual memory palaces and memory palaces, but I don't know that for sure. So you've got to try all the things. Adolfo here has just said that he's wasted a lot of time on these things. And so the most direct thing to do is not to waste your time and just go with the fundamentals. However, if you want to hear some alternative thoughts, listen to my interview with Idraz Zogai on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast, and that'll help you out further thinking through it. You can listen to the podcast episode on the ugly sister effect, help you think your way through it, and continue to watch this live stream because we're going to get into some more about this and why that you should be avoiding softwares. And well, there's a couple of places where I don't think you should necessarily, but you got to use them intelligently, and there's a way to do them for free, and I'll mention some of that a bit later. Adolfo said, well, actually, it's not free. There's nothing free. There's nothing free. People who are searching for free haven't quite understood that you're always going to spend time, you're always going to spend energy, and if you really want to speed up the process, then when you find a good teacher, you invest in a curated curriculum, and then you speed up your progress immensely, and you watch all the videos from beginning to end, or you read every page from beginning to end, and you actually do what's said there. All right. But yeah, there's no such thing as free. What a silly word. Oh, well, silly word, a good word. It can be useful. All right, let's see here. In any case, the real honest answer is I don't know, Raphael, if it will sabotage your progress, but there's all the evidence in the world that it'll do worse than sabotage your progress. It'll lock you outside of the skill that you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to use memory techniques, anything that's an interstitial, anything that's an interruption from the direct skill of seeing a name like Raphael, thinking about the painter Raphael, and then maybe adding Ninja Turtle Raphael so that I can remember that your name is Raphael. Anything that gets in between that and the skill is a waste. It's a total and utter dismay. And yet, there are all kinds of sharks in the water who will want you to waste all of that time and energy because they don't really want you to have these skills. Now, I'm being a bit cynical and perhaps a bit dramatic, but it does appear that way. And I don't think that there's any software coming that's really going to give you the memory palace skill. Now, there might be some softwares that help improve your memory. There might be some steps towards being able to use a memory palace in the software. I explore this all the time. I've done a lot of research. We're talking about some of that research today. And I've gone and gotten a quote for what my idea would cost. I don't think it's actually going to tackle the real problem. And there's an episode coming out on the podcast with someone who's already designed a memory palace software. It looks like it could help some people. But as we talked about on the episode, the whole point is to release you from the need for the software, which is already kind of, well, if that's the goal, then why not just learn the fundamentals without the software? You're just going to lock yourself outside of the skill you're looking for. I'm sure of it, even though I want to support his initiative. And why do I want to support his initiative? Because I'm a scientist. I don't know that all my assumptions are correct. And I always seek for them to be challenged. And I'll even support the person who's challenging my own assumptions, provided it seems like they're putting in the work and actually doing something good. So there we go. I know there's cognitive dissonance in me contradicting my own self, but I think it's the only way to play. All right, let's see here. Adolfo says, I have used Call of Duty maps as memory palaces, better return than VR. Great. So I don't know Call of Duty, but the whole thing is You got to dive in. You got to do the work. You got to actually figure it out, whether it's going to work for you or not. And if you aren't doing the multiple, cross-referencing different things, you're never going to really know. You got to do these things for at least 90 days in order to really make a decision. Haround is here. Yo, what's up? What's up, Haround? Great for being here. Great that you're here. Thanks for being here. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and your thoughts on virtual reality and Memory Palace software. So Kirigami says, thanks, Adolfo, for sharing that. Really appreciate that and creating a proper guidance. You are awesome. Adolfo is indeed awesome. Nigel asks, are the podcasts free to listen? They are right now, but keep in mind that they will cost you your time and energy, and they'll be useless to you if you don't actually implement anything that is said there. So I would suggest that you start by taking the free course before you listen to a single episode of the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. Ideally, you would also take the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass, because the podcast is really for the people who actually have done stuff. And luckily, people notice that. So if you want to get started and make get the full value out of the free, quote-unquote free podcast, go to magneticmerrymethod.com/YT. Get started with the free course, which is not really free because it's not going to do you any good if you don't actually do what's said there, which will cost you time and energy. Oh, no! And it'll be the best time and energy you ever spend. Look at this smile. Oh, that's the ultimate evidence. I have so much fun using memory palaces and showing up and having people come here and bask in the glory of this tradition, and to see people like Adolfo doing so well with them and just in love with this tradition, the way that it really works. And, great to also see Chromewoman walking as well, supporting everything that we do, like week after week now. I appreciate that so much. Of course, good to always see William and Reclaiming Life, same person. And everybody who's new, so if you're new, make sure you get subscribed to this channel, hit the thumbs up, let me know what you're doing, what you're thinking, where you're at, and let's say hello to Chepetos. I like that. Or is it Cheaptoas? Cheaptoas. I like that name anyway, however it works. Hello, Anthony. Thank you very much for the live streams. Well, thank you. You're very, very welcome. Ujwal says, I want to remember textbooks. Please help me how to do this. Search magneticmerrymethod.com, how to memorize a textbook. Full training there for you. And do what it says there. Also, make sure you take the free course at magneticmerrymethod.com/YT. I have the sinking feeling that some people will not take the initiative to type that in. So maybe what I got to do is actually pop the link into the chat so you have something to clickety-click, and hope that you do. So there's that link for you. It'll show up all weird on the screen in a second. Dan says, what is in the master class? Thanks for asking about that, Dan. The master class starts with a program that you're highly encouraged to take but not forced to take, called the Master Plan. Now, why would we want to take the Master Plan? So that you have the bird's eye view of what the magnetic memory method is and how it applies. Then you're encouraged to take the study guide. Oh, let me back up a second. The master plan is not complete until you complete everything on the exercises page. The exercises page is a different page than the master plan page, just to keep things neat and tidy. And there's a little bit of an additional course there, which is called Visualization Mastery, so that you know what visualization really is. You're not struggling, sweating, I can't see images in my mind. It's the course that will convince you that you don't need to see images in your mind. If you can, great. But if you can't, no worries, because you're going to learn how to use the full range of the magnetic modes to unlock all of your senses, and make sure that every time you create a magnetic image in a memory palace, both the memory palace and the magnetic image are plump, robust, and actually magnetic. Because if they aren't, you're going to struggle, or you're not going to get quite the results that you want. So you've got to be hitting all the bases, right? And this is very, very unusual, and I still am astonished every time I read another memory book or take another person's course. I'm just like, why do they keep talking about pictures only all the time? Makes no sense. Most people aren't going to be able to do that with just that one register, that one tone. You need multiple levels of tones. Maybe it sounds a little difficult to some people. It really isn't. If you can just get the proper training that's going to encourage you to do the exercises, because if you will do the exercises, you will have all of this in order inside of a weekend, really. Now, then you're encouraged to go to the study guide, and the study guide will help you decide what you want to tackle next. Like, do you want to learn a language? If so, there are 2 courses. There's the course on how to learn and memorize vocabulary and the ultimate language learning secret. I would start with the vocabulary course and then take the ultimate language learning secret, and they work together to make sure that you don't think that just memorizing vocabulary is how to learn a language. It's a huge part of learning a language, but you also need to know how to learn a language. And there are a number of steps involved to make sure that it's easy, that it's fun, and you're reducing the cognitive load at every possible step. So that's there. It might not be the one you want to take, though, so then you might want to take the course on memorizing math and numbers. You might want to take the course on names. You might want, and names and faces actually is what that course covers. You might want to take any of the other courses that are in there. And then there's an FAQ section, which has a number of detailed videos that walk through some of the most common questions that I get. In fact, there's even the uncommon questions. And the whole point there is that you see the possibilities. Not necessarily you're going to go and do it, but that you get a sense of how you can guide yourself and direct yourself. And that's, in a nutshell, the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. Let me know if you have any more questions around that, Dan, and we would love to have you in there. And if you haven't taken the free course, start with that. See if this is something for you, because it is essentially a martial art of the mind, and as with martial arts, it's not for everybody. All right, but I hope it's for you, and let's see here. Chrome Woman Walking says, "Good night, everyone. Getting up early to watch the masterclass. I'm up to the section on textbooks." Excellent, excellent. So that is the robust version that is what I did when I was doing my PhD, and it is super powerful, super powerful. That is another thing, Dan, that is in there, but that's in the master plan, and it's like how and it's called How to Realistically Memorize Textbooks, because a lot of people, they want to memorize every single word in a textbook. That rarely makes sense. Now, I am currently memorizing verbatim every single word of entire books, and it is necessary in this particular context, and I'll tell you that it usually is not. And I've memorized lots and lots of books, quote unquote, realistically, which is, can you speak intelligently about their major points? Can you connect them with other books and their major points? And then how does that apply to podcasts? How does it apply to videos? How does it apply to this, that, and the other thing? And it's very, very important. All right. So, Crone Woman Walking says, "Good night. Enjoy the courses tomorrow." Great, great, great. Dan says, "Okay, thank you. That is insane." Well, I don't know if it's insane or not, but we're definitely trying to be practical and reasonable for people. Next point on the reasons why that VR and MP software cannot improve memory. This is very, very important. VR leads to absence in the world. If you're just joining us, these are not my opinions. These are coming from Experience on Demand. An excellent, excellent book. Jeremy Bailenson, please read it if you're interested in this topic. So a big part of the book is why you shouldn't use VR, when you shouldn't use VR, and so forth. And because VR leads to absence in the world, you should never use it for anything where you're supposed to be present in the world, okay? And this applies to Memory Palace software as well. So he strongly discourages, and I said at the beginning of this live stream, all the reasons why that you should pay attention to this guy, Stanford University, etc. And, the idea that there are some things where you could benefit from being absent of the world, I'm totally fine with that. Great. But memory training is not about being absent in the world. It's being present in the world. We train memory for presence. We train memory so we can speak languages, so we can pass exams, so we can be laser focused on the present moment, right? Not so we're in fantasy worlds, so that we're in this moment. We can remember that there was a Raphael earlier on this chat, We can remember what we read from books. I can go and teach right out of the top of my head about Advaita Vedanta that I've been studying for so long because I've memorized actual verbatim what it says in its most important texts. Not that I necessarily want to teach it, but, I could. And I can be present to the actual material itself because it's in my memory, right? So this is true for you if you're learning a language. Where you want to be in your virtual memory palace when you're trying to have a conversation with people? No, you want that stuff in your mind, right on the tip of your tongue, so you can speak it. Now, a real memory palace, if you do it the magnetic memory method way, is going to be the thing that gets it into long-term memory as quick as I've ever seen. So, we were able to share James Gerwing's story today about becoming the Canadian memory champion, but we've got stories of people learning so many words in such a short period of time. It's unbelievable. And then actually doing what it takes to get it into your motor mouth memory, so you can actually speak to people because they're present with what is actually happening in the world. They train with the technique so that it works when you're present in the world. We train for direct and immediate recall without interstitial devices, without reference to apps, because apps aren't in the real world. Well, they are, and they are real. But that's not what we're doing with these techniques. I just talked with Ash Henson on the podcast. The episode will be coming out in a while from outlier-linguistics.com. And this guy, he sat for a PhD in teaching Chinese as a second language. This is an American who is so good with Chinese that he actually teaches how to teach Chinese as a second language, right? And he said everybody at that exam, they were just waiting to see, how he was going to perform. And they wanted their apps. They wanted to have all these technology to refer to have books to refer to. But that's not what you get. You're not allowed to have that. You have to sit cold, right? Because you train for direct and immediate recall. And he shares some of what he did with memory techniques in order to do it, which is really exciting to listen to. So stay tuned for that episode of the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. But that's the real deal, right? And you don't get to have apps in the real world when you're really communicating with real people. You don't want to. It's poisonous for society. And all these people who are sitting there at dinner and they're not talking with each other and they're like, ugh. Garbage. That's the dregs of society right there. You want to be the person who's switched on in the moment, connecting with people, speaking languages with them, remembering what you read from books, knowing what the names of the authors are, knowing what they said in those books or what they said on those podcasts or whatever it is, those video courses that you took. You train for that with memory techniques. You're going to put an app in between that, you're already losing because that's not what memory techniques are about. They're about immediate recall, and you train for it, and you don't need an app to do it. It's just a waste. And we train without the interstitial stages because any training that you do will absorb the conditions of the training, right? So if you're going to your memory palace and then you have to think, well, it was in this image of a room that, you're like, no. Now, again, I could be wrong about these assumptions. Maybe there's a way to do it. But I can't see it, and I don't see any evidence from it. And the whole point in Experience on Demand is that VR leads to absence in the world. Software can lead to absence in the world. We don't want that. We want to be present to the world. And that's why I always have argued that we want to use real memory palaces wherever possible, because that in itself is going to be a tool to get the information into long-term memory and whatever other levels of memory that you need. So you don't need the memory palace anymore. It's meant to quicken the pace. So like Ash will talk about, and you'll hear it on the future podcast, you can sit in that exam. Everybody else is going to be fried with worry because, I don't get to have my app. He sits down and nails it. Wow. Amazing. So, good to see a book pointing this out from an expert, a leading expert in the world on VR and so forth. Let me check in with the chat. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And Nigel says, VR is bad for the eyes. Could be. I don't know. But if it is, that's pretty low on my list of priorities. Higher on my list of priorities is, are you going to get the outcome that you're looking for? If I'm wrong, well, then I'm wrong. But I don't think so. I don't see any evidence that anything is ever going to be any other way, unless implants start to work. But I don't want one. I don't know about you. And I'm going to talk about the reasons why not only do I not want implants, but why you shouldn't either before we leave today's session. And I hope that you hear it to the core, because anybody who's not thinking this through is in danger of signing up for some, that we've already signed up for some stuff that's very bad for the survival of the species, but it's getting even spookier. And so stay tuned for that if you're interested. And if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, your thoughts on software, etc. And any questions you have, dive in and ask them. And Reclaiming Life says to Dan, we'd love to see you in the masterclass. Those of us in it love it and consistently learn from each other's company and support. Thank you, Reclaiming Life William, for sharing that. And always a pleasure to have you be part of our community. Physico is in the house. Good to see you, Physico. Nigel says transhumanism is closer than we think. Nigel, I'd love to know how you are defining transhumanism. Please share your definition of that term. I remember when Christopher Dudney released his book on transhumanism, must have been 2009 or something like that, 2008. And I remember talking to him about it. And I don't know that definition he was using at that time is the same that you're using. But what a great book. What a great book. Kirigami says, we don't want to be Cyberpunk 2077, or we don't want Cyberpunk. My mouth is out of order here. We don't want Cyberpunk 2077 to be real. No, indeed not. All right, let's get my mouth watered up here so it doesn't get so sticky. I have gum mouth. Physico says, happy to be back. Sometimes life work gets in the way, but memory is a priority I want to maintain in my life. Indeed. All right, let's get on to the next reason. I think this is the biggest nail in the coffin. Why VR and MP software will not improve your memory. And it's so obvious, but it has to be pointed out. This is from Jeremy Bailenson in Experience on Demand. Very interesting book. Don't waste VR on the mundane. And so much memory software is so guilty of this. It's unbelievable. It's a moral corruption. And the reason why they do it, one reason for sure, is because they don't think that the mass public will do the heavy lifting involved to ever do anything that even remotely equates to real memory improvement. So they Mickey Mouse it at every turn. And they make it as loosey-goosey and la-di-da as they possibly can, despite all evidence to the contrary that if you want real improvement, you're going to need some next level sort of thing, to use that next level statement, which would be either that you are a very, very well-structured, self-directed learner who can follow directions and test consistently the different considerations that are needed for continual progress, or you're going to invest in yourself to have a community around you that is able to help make sure that you're not wasting the techniques on the mundane. But all the apps that I've ever seen so far, with the exception of the one person you'll hear on the podcast soon, are wasting it on the mundane almost exclusively. So you might be thinking, well, what about the language learning apps? Well, what about them? First of all, they're not memory apps. They are pattern recognition apps, which is different than memorization apps. And second of all, most of them have huge problems in terms of the kinds of things that they're encouraging you to memorize, such as red cats don't drink blue milk. When was the last time you said that in a conversation? And so on and so on. Anyway, I think everybody knows the deal. Plus, they're filled with advertising, coins, levels, la-di-da stuff that no one actually really, needs, except for maybe they do, but we're not. None of us are those. There is no such thing as sheeple. Each and every individual person is a fantastic opportunity waiting to happen if they would just buckle down on the fundamentals. And usually the problem is that people are too smart for their own good. They're doing the calculations and they're talking themselves out of using the techniques that actually work, which is a shame. Because if you would just focus on the logic and not talk yourself out of the other logic that seems to supersede just the simple stuff, oh, it could really be that simple? No, it can't possibly be, right? So what we need to do is get people focusing on the fundamentals and not talking themselves out of it. All right. So let's see here. What does this book go on to say? Well, it says, if your experience is not impossible, dangerous, expensive, or counterproductive, use a different medium or do it in the real world. So let's stress test this. Are memory palaces impossible? No. Are they dangerous? No. Are they expensive? Nope. Are they counterproductive? No. So therefore, use a different medium or do it in the real world. So, end of story. One of the most acknowledged thinkers on VR has given us every reason not to spend another second thinking about VR as useful for the memory palace or any software by extension, because it's just not necessary. It's not what the tradition is. The memory palace is for on-demand recall, provided you use it correctly. So, good night, Adolfo. Thank you for being here. Thank you for checking out the replay. Mañana. Really appreciate that. And thank you again for that super chat. Amazing. Really, really appreciate it. Physico says, if VR gets you away from reality, how about augmented reality? Well, Physico, thank you for asking that. Please check out the replay. We went through augmented reality already, what it means for this, and why it's still not getting us to this point on the screen now, using the memory palace correctly. It's an interstitial. Anything that is an interstitial is evading the actual discipline, the actual things that memory techniques can bring for you if you just go direct. Nigel says, I feel that we either use more of our brain or less of it with an implant. Well, we're going to get into that, because the reality is that there are some other considerations, and just to help me remember that there are other considerations, there's the words, other considerations. Harvinder is in the house. No problem for joining late, Harvinder. You can watch the replay. Thank you so much for being here. Always good to see Harvinder. We had many, many master plan and mastermind and masterclass members here today. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Matthew is in the house. It's live, and it is alive. The monster of memory is here to speak. All right, and it is live. And never forget, my friends, the wise words of Mr. Death. Doo-doo-doo. Catch you later. That can't quite show up in any meaningful way. I have to get that on the screen somehow. Catch you later, says Mr. Death. So we're live. Now is the opportunity to ask questions. Please be active in the chat if you have anything you want to say. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And never forget those words from Mr. Death. Catch you later. Indeed, indeed, indeed. So what are some of these other considerations to Nigel's point? Well, the first thing is we are now in a world with deepfakes and... Sorry, I've got that spelt wrong. Autocorrect must have got me in the end. Deepfakes and vishing is what I meant to have there. But so deepfakes, we're now in this realm where people are pretty close to just being able to reproduce video and audio of anybody, right? This pretty much means that we can predict pretty safely that people are going to use that in negative ways. And because they're going to use it in negative ways, there's going to be more regulations. There's going to be some, like, anonymity on the internet is probably going to have to disappear. And you're going to have some sort of registration. Now, obviously, you're going to say, well, people can get around that even so. And yes, even so. But the whole point is there's going to be more regulations to get around deepfakes and vishing. And this is not good for the free and open internet. So we can just assume that, these are going to be problems that leak into every area of software. So what we want to do is perhaps think more about ever downloading any more software, because a lot of that software and a lot of what's happening with the acceleration of deepfakes, vishing, and all this other stuff is because people are just openly sharing so much data. And you can just assume that if they can fake video and audio, they're soon going to just be able to fake written word, right? And just write what you most likely would be most likely to write, right? And so it's weird times coming. Now, I don't know that it's actually going to go that way, but the point, and this is the real point, is that all of the free user data metrics that we have served up are going to lead to more regulations that will either refine how our user data is gathered and used, or it's going to put a damper on it. And there may end up being a whole different kind of internet coming. So these are considerations. And why does this have to do with virtual reality and memory palaces and software for it and so forth? Well, it's very simple. If the internet goes into lockdown, as I think we can anticipate that it's going to, increased lockdown, less free sharing, etc., noting that free never was free anyway, what we're going to see is that you're going to need memory techniques more than ever before, because you're not going to have the same even desire to use the internet as we do. Internet will probably be like Blockbuster. Good luck if you can find a place to rent videos. And even if you could, you got to give your ID to rent a video. I think I'll just, go to the theater where I can still be anonymous and watch a movie, right? I think that that's one thing that we need to consider. So that means that if you want to be smart and you want to have a life of mental intelligence, then you're going to want to train. And so how are you best going to train? Off the internet with the tradition. That's one prediction that I have. Incidentally, going years back, Brad Zupp and I talked about this on the podcast, and he had the idea that, there's probably coming more levels of society, and there would be an intellectual class potentially. I don't want to put words in his mouth, and I don't want to misremember what we said there, but it was something like that. And we were talking about Plato's Republic and the segmentation and fragmentation of societies, and there may be this interesting class coming. So definitely check out that episode if you're interested. And there's also the corporate territorialization of your brain. So what does that mean? Well, we already have corporate territorialization of our brains. It's just that it's very, very poor. I'll share a comic with you that I drew, a rough draft of a comic that gets to this point in a second. But we're seeing more and more corporate territorialization of the brain as they use data metrics against us. And then they now want initiatives, maybe smoke and mirrors to it, I don't know, but things like Neuralink to drill into your brain with actual electrodes that would territorialize it even more and optimize even more the way that they could show ads that you find really, really compelling, etc. And, it's just something to think about, right? And so if you really want to have your brain free, able to think the thoughts that you want to think without undue manipulation, then you really want to restrict your software diet and train your brain to work very cleanly, efficiently, without interstitials as much as possible. And we also have the coming clockwork orangization of everything. So imagine things like the social credit system that we see in certain countries evolving. Yeah. Oh, great. You've got enough points now. We've gamified everything so that you've got enough points to travel wherever you want to travel, etc., which comes with the punishment of not being able to travel where you want to travel, etc., etc. Now, imagine what they're going to be able to do when they've got it in your head and they're going to be able to punish you with a zap. Oh, you thought something that you shouldn't think, etc., etc. So I drew this little comic called The World's Angriest Web Surfer. This is just in my memory journal. Wow, endless ads, but not a single one relevant to me. And then this world's angriest web surfer says, 21st century laser targeting is useless. And then zap. So imagine, just thinking your thoughts that you want to think, and then you get zapped. That you would definitely be the world's angriest web surfer if that happened. Unless, of course, you get zapped again if you complain for complaining. So these are other considerations. Yes, it's a little bit tangential, but I think it's very much connected to this. We need to understand that the memory palace tradition, all of the memory technique tradition has worked for thousands of years without software, etc. And software is being abused continuously to territorialize parts of the human brain and our behaviors and commodify it to the nth degree, to a ridiculous degree that is going in some dark directions. So what to do instead? Well, MPs, we know, don't have to be in virtual reality, so learn the fundamentals. Learn them. Practice consistently with goals and supportive systems, right? So what does practice consistently mean? It means use them pretty much every day and have goals, and then have systems that support those goals. So what would a system be? Well, we've talked about things like daily rituals and habits and habit chains that you could use every day, knock them off one by one, make sure you do them so that you have consistent forward progress, and then have goals that actually mean something. So Kirigami earlier, was talking about lethologica. Well, yeah, you just memorize a word. You want to be able to memorize words regardless of whether you need them or not. But what's the point? If you're struggling with lethologica, then you need to step back and actually memorize words that you need so that later you have the skills to do it without having any struggle, right? So, then you get to words that you don't need. And then you just get to have what you'd like, So that's very, very important. All right. Thanks for being with us, Physico. Hope you can check out the replay. I hope you can get better internet. And Nigel says, I wish I was able to explain it in an articulate way. Nigel, you're doing just fine so far, but if you want to get better, set goals and supportive systems that help you express yourself in an articulated way. But I'm very impressed that you're using the word articulated. And wow, the battle is already being won if you can actually express that. You're very articulate already. So just practice and set yourself goals, meaningful goals that help you do that. All right. So let's go back here. Kirigami says, that's an interesting comic slide. What's the name of our hero? So I was thinking about that. I actually wrote a bunch of other ones. I didn't draw them out, but I was thinking of calling him John P. Sheeple. John P. Sheeple would be his name. He's not our hero, though. He's a total idiot because he's on an app all the time. And I was thinking his app would be named Sleary or maybe Sneery. And some of my other ones would be, hey, Sneery, how do I become an overnight success? And Sneery says, okay, I'm searching for that. You can either practice for years and years with no expectation of success or sell your soul to the devil. And the next panel is dial 666. Oh, I'm laughing at my own joke. I don't know if it's funny to you. Let me know if you think that's funny. And, well, I'll share the rest for later. But if I could actually draw, that would even be better. But just imagine that first panel or that last panel, dial 666. That's what John P. Sheeple would say. Anyway, I don't know if The World's Angriest Web Surfer is the best title for my little comic here. I have no particular plan to become a comic artist, but it just suddenly emerged. And I started to write all these little 4-panel comics. And I only drew one so far. And they would probably be the same 4 every time. And John P. Sheeple here would be doing something. And anytime that he did something intelligent, he would be zapped and punished. Or anytime that he did something stupid, he would be punished somehow by Sneery. Sneery or Sleery? What do you think is better? I think Sneery is maybe better. All right. Dan says I thought it was funny. Kirigami says it is funny. All right. So maybe I have hope yet. My mom used to say, man, you should be a comedian. She used to tell me that all the time. And I always thought, no, I can't be a comedian. I'm not funny at all. But maybe I will one day. I don't know. I've done stand-up before. And people did laugh, but I didn't really think it was particularly my genre. But in any case, we've got 2 people who think it's funny who took the time to type that. So thank you so much for that. And if you're watching the replay, let me know in the chat if you thought it was funny. Speaking of replays, Peggy says, thank goodness for replay. It looks like I'm tuning in late, but I can catch up later. Resist corporate mind control. Yes. Thank you, Peggy. And thank you for checking out the live replay later, which will not be live. It'll be a replica if you watch it on YouTube, and you can see the chat as it unfolded. And if you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Matthew, thank you for being here. Matthew says, any idea when implants will be popular enough to be effective for us or corporations? Honestly, I feel you're right, but in the time frame of thousands of years. Yeah, well, like I always say, I stand to be corrected, and you better believe that thousands of years are going to correct a couple of things. And no one can be far-sighted enough to imagine thousands of years in the future, I don't think. But one thing that seems to be true is that humans have been very, very, very bad at predicting the future. And that's to the point of drawing comics and making jokes, etc. Comedy is for the present moment, to reflect on the anxieties, the fears, etc. that we would have in the present moment. And one of the things that I would do if I continue to draw this comic or write the comic or whatever would be, look, what are the real anxieties here? So we've got predator anxiety, we've got prey anxiety, we've got existential anxiety, things like that. And that's ultimately all that would be here in the world's angriest web surfer. I might come up with a different title for it. But in any case, the whole idea would be to focus on those anxieties right now, because now is the only time. But I don't think we can accurately predict the future. Humans have shown they're pretty bad at it all along. Peggy gives a laugh. Excellent. Thank you, Peggy. Reclaiming Life says, the time has come for my disconnect, reflection, and meditation before bed. Thanks again for another live. You got my thumbs up. Well, thank you, William, as always, for being here. And hit the thumbs up if you're joining us. Let me know where you are in the chat and what you're doing, what you're thinking, and any thoughts you have on any questions, etc. Now is the time. And so we already went through this, but what to do instead of VR and software? Well, we know that memory palaces don't have to be in virtual reality, so learn the fundamentals, practice consistently with goals and supportive systems. If you want to know more about that, we have replay on setting a vision statement for yourself, etc. And we know that you shouldn't be absent. This is according to Experience on Demand, right? Don't be absent unless that's useful in the app, but we want to be present frequently. So be present frequently. How exactly that's going to play out for you, I don't necessarily know. But that's what the memory tradition is for. So you can be more present. You can be more actively engaged in the world. You can learn languages, etc. And so I would suggest that you extrovert your intentions and teach others, or one or the other. So what do I mean by extrovert your intentions? Well, instead of thinking about what's in it for you, think about it, what's in it for others. What's in it for others if you learn a language, if you are able to pass the exams, etc. And really focus on your contribution. And if you can teach these skills to other people, once you've mastered them for yourself, then teach them. It's the best thing you'll ever do, because you'll learn so much more about how they work. And you'll see so much more about how to improve your own practice. And every time you can extrovert your intentions so that it's outward focused for others, and then let go of the outcome, your adventure in life will be so much more profound. I'm sure of it. But you'll need to practice it enough to feel it. But chances are you'll feel it immediately if you dive in and do it. And then be consistent for life. Your brain is here until you die, right? You're not dead until your brain is dead. So why not pick up a consistent practice and absolutely nail it every single day with some kind of memory practice based on memorizing information that actually improves other lives, not just your own, but the lives of others. That's what to do instead. Because as we learned in this book, and you'll learn if you go out and read it, Experience on Demand, VR is about absence in the world, whereas you want memory. You're improving your memory, even if you don't think you're doing it, to be more present in the world and be consistently present. Very, very important. Learn languages, right? So his other point, don't waste the software on the mundane. Well, people are wasting it on the mundane. You use memory palaces to learn languages, to learn the names of people, to cleanse your mind, right? So I'm memorizing all the time, stuff that cleanses my mind with the Sanskrit that I'm memorizing. I'm doing that so that I can be a better person, serve better, not have my ego in the way all the time. Because believe me, even though my goal and mission is to remove my ego, well, actually I've changed that a little bit, because I don't think you can remove the ego, but you can reduce thought, right? And the reduction of thought starves the ego and puts the ego in its place. And so I'm memorizing all this stuff to cleanse my mind so I can serve better. Because if I'm less concerned about myself, I'm more concerned, extroverted on the world, then everything gets better. And serve and serve and serve. And then let go of the outcome. Be a little bit, whatever. You guys take do your thing. Do your thing. And like we saw, James Gerwing says, hey, I'm now the Canadian memory champion. Thanks for your input. Well, I never would have predicted that. I couldn't have made it happen if I tried. But he went and did it. And somehow he says, thanks for your input. Amazing. Amazing. So just for those of you who are in the Magnetic Memory Method Mastermind group in the program soon, there'll be coming 3 softwares that do make sense, that already exist, how to use them, and how to have them supplement your practice instead of degrade it. And so we'll be talking about that And so if you're in the mastermind group, stay tuned for that. If not, find out how and get involved. All right. So the book was Experience on Demand that we talked about today by Jeremy Bailenson. I really, really do encourage you to go out and get it. And stay tuned for Study Hacks. The announcement is coming soon. So if you're not on my email list, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT, get registered so that you are. And congratulations again to James Gerwing for becoming the Canadian Memory Champion. That is absolutely fantastic and wonderful. And thanks for letting me know about it. And I'm really, really grateful that you were able to do that. All right, let's check in with the chat. And Matthew says, Anthony, if you knew me, you would laugh at saying I can't see the exact future, but I can't just snap predictions. I really have to try. It's possible. I want to prove it. Great. I mean, prove it. Prove it. Nigel says, but I am an introvert. Okay, well, what's your definition on some book that tells them the difference between introvert and extrovert? What is that book? What does it say? Why do you believe what that book says? And why are you an introvert? And why is that a barrier? Why should that be a barrier? I'm an introvert. Look at me. I'm extroverting like crazy. According to the books. Who cares? You're going to live your life based on what a book says or what you've internalized, or are you going to live your life based on what you want to do and get it done? This is utterly meaningless, introvert, extrovert. When I said extrovert, I meant in the sense of flipping out your intention to serve the world, not using extrovert in that weak and nonsensical way that people use it based on, the idea that, oh, you like to be alone, so somehow you're an introvert. Nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. All right, Kirigami says, one question. Harry Lorraine presented a very interesting idea to remember numbers through words in his book, Super Memory Power. My thoughts? Well, that's an old technique, and if you learn how to do it, it will serve you very, very well. And so I don't know what thoughts you're looking for, Kirigami, but at the end of the day, yes, it as far as I know, it is the way to. Every technique for memorizing numbers is basically boils down to using words. And there are a number of techniques for doing it, and they all boil down to words, even if they involve images, because those images are described by words. So you're not getting away from words one way or the other. And notice also that numbers are words. The cruel question is, and the fascinating question is, why is it that words are easier to memorize than numbers, given that numbers are just words? It's kind of fascinating. I haven't quite figured it out. But SDFG says, I like it. I kind of like your consistent content on this channel. Great. Well, let me know which is it. You like it or you kind of like it? Please let me know. Matthew says, I really enjoyed this stream. I'm coming back. I must start my memory training so I can prove to you that future predictions are possible. I'll be back like the Terminator. I'll be back. Great, Matthew. Great to have met you. And if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. If you're not subscribed, get subscribed to this channel. Hit the bell notification icon so you're notified next time we go live, assuming that notifications are still going to happen. And I'll meet you in the future on the next live stream. Let me know what you might like to see on a future live stream. And I'll stick around here for a few minutes if you have anything that you want to contribute in terms of questions, comments, etc. Otherwise, I'm going to make like a tree and leave. See, I'm not that much of a comedian after all. Let's see here. SDFG says, sorry, it is like. All right. Thank you for that. Yeah, so lots of things coming up on the show. We're going to do something on semantic memory in the near future. And I might do some more of these little comics that I shared earlier. If you're watching the replay and you didn't let me know now, let me know if you like that idea for a comic. Might be fun to put out once in a while. And yeah, we're going to do a lot of things coming up. Maybe it'll be what you would like to see, or maybe it will be what others will like to see. And might talk about this initiative that's going on right now, which is a fun little memory test that I've been working on. Lots to do, lots to do, lots to do. Always lots to do. All right. So in the absence of any future comments or questions, let's see here. Kirigami is coming up with something. Thank you for that, Kirigami. That's an interesting thought. Why do we remember words more than numbers, which are nothing but words? I think words are more tangible than numbers. Yeah, I think that there's something to that. But then the question is, why, right? Why is 1 more tangible, or is it something about 535? Because 1 is pretty tangible. The reality is, though, to your question, is that what Harry Lorraine is doing is helping you make numericity more concrete to your mind. But it's not about words or pictures. It's about a couple of things. It's about the serial placement, the serial positioning of that information so that you're able to link things together. So it's not just about words. It's about how the words operate with the other words, or how the images, which are words, operate with the other images, etc., etc., etc. And so you need to see it in the full context of the memory techniques. And you need to know those memory techniques as well as you possibly can. And so I invite you to get the free course, if you don't have it already, at magneticmarymethod.com/YT. Let me share that in the link for anybody who is here who hasn't taken it yet. And if you want to join the Magnetic Mary Method Masterclass, I do indeed invite you to do so. I want to thank Croneman Walking and Adolfo for their amazing super chats. Again, thank you for all your support. Really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to those of you who want to join us in the masterclass. And if you're registered and you are interested, keep your eyes open for the Study Hacks email coming out soon, the invitation, and I'll hope to see you there. And Nigel asks, is that the 4-part series? Yes, it is, but it's more than just the 4-part series. There are 3 ebooks there for you that will help you complete what needs to be done in order to get the full benefit out of it. And don't kid yourself. These things just require you to show up and do it. So James Gorwing did it. He's now the Canadian memory champion and undefeated with the records that he's set, if I understand what he's said there. And this is incredible. And you can do it for competition. You can do it for whatever it is that your heart calls you to do. You can be the architect of your dreams and your fantasies, so long as you actually are realistic about doing what you really want to do, set the goals, create the practice systems that support your progress towards the goals, and don't make it anybody else's responsibility but your own. Stand up, say, I'm going to get this done, then do it. It's really not that much more complicated than that. And I do all that I can to support people, inspire people. And one of those things that we did is, with the help of Christian Fitzharris, to inspire people, to encourage people, is to understand that it's all just a game. It's all just a game, and it's a lot of fun. So with that said, let me introduce you, if you haven't seen it, to Christian Fitzharris, also known as Scholar, with our brain games. And until we have a chance to play the brain game, the real brain game, without an app, just us getting together to talk about our practice, the things that we do with our memories and our minds, enjoy brain games.
Let the games begin! I define, establish, exercise, and practice. Externalize spatial maps as I attack the path of mature learner. Bottle burner, max memory reserve, and earnest. I'm a furnace, an anomaly, sibling of Simonides known to reduce cognitive load. And oh, how I rotate, juggling space, making a case for brain games so digital amnesia leaves you. Digital dementia is censured. Did y'all tag Herenium on your mind wall? Review, recall, we will evolve. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with brain games. Info encoded, mental high roller. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with the brain games. Info encoded, mental high roller. This is not a game you can afford to lose.
Why?
Brain games, don't need an app for that. I just attack with the path of a lab rat. I mean scientist, I'm an nihilist, finalist, illuminist, numinous, doing this, proving this, who is this scholar? Dopamine fiend, clean sheen like the Pleiades, enemies, illities, killing with abilities, strolling with affinity, rolling with McKinney. Brain games, healthy snacks, build a palace, pick some facts, learn to balance while you rap, unleash talents, don't look back. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with the brain games. Info encoded, mental high roller. Brain games, synapses flashing, mind palace crashing with the brain game. Info encoded, mental high roller. Scholar. MagneticMemoryMethod.com.
I think I had the microphone off there. I just was saying that I really appreciate what Christian did to put that song together, to collaborate a little bit with incorporating some of the phrases and words that I added, etc., and also to Ali for putting it together. And I hope you enjoy the brain games thing. And we want to inspire people to see these techniques for what they really are, which is fun, and fun every time you use them. So please go out and use them. And if you have questions, get in touch. It's getting harder and harder to answer questions in email because there's just so many of them. And you can always use the forum or leave comments here on the YouTube replays and the dedicated videos that we do. But at the end of the day, really, so much of this is answered if you just keep using the techniques. And all the questions in the world are great, but try and solve them on your own. And we've got material on the channel about using the Feynman technique, the magnetic memory method way. And so hopefully you will follow up that as well. And the whole point is to help you understand that, self-directed learning tries to answer the question for yourself first before reaching out. And then when you reach out, you actually show the person you're asking what you did, why you think it's not working, and then they're better able to laser target. Well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Instead of coming at it cold every single time. So it's not to push anybody away, but it's to help you become what you need to be anyway, which is a self-directed learner. You want to escape the prison of mediocrity. That's what you got to do, and that's how you've got to do it. All right, everybody. Thank you again for being here today. And a last little bit of inspiration. How about a little bit of a memory lesson from one of our own? Rusil Huertas has this to say, and then that'll be it. So for those of you who stuck around, you're in for a treat because you're going to get a little Memory Palace training right now and more inspiration, as if the brain games inspiration wasn't enough. So thank you again. Oh, we got a question here from Rosa. Rosa, thank you for being here. Let me answer this before we go. I'm from Brazil, and I've been trying to learn the French language. How could I improve my memory? Well, great question, Rosa. And first of all, let me congratulate you for working to learn a language. You can improve your memory by just applying memory techniques to French. I think it's the most direct path. Practice with the information that's actually going to improve your ability to speak in a way that gives you memory exercise every single day. So what I would suggest you do, if you don't have it already, is get the free memory improvement kit at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. Take it very, very seriously. Create your memory palaces, and then actually start to memorize vocabulary in your memory palaces. After you have some core vocabulary memorized, then make sure that you wrap it all together with some phrases so that you can do both, and then continue with a proper language learning program, which essentially means get in touch with some native speakers and spend some time with them. And, there's lots of tips and tricks around this. But basically what you want to do is have as much meaningful input with them as you possibly can. And there's lots of ways to do that. Maricela is in the house. Good to see you, Maricela. Well, we can go on and on about language learning, but this is not the live stream for that. But at the end of the day, instead of spending a lot of time on apps, go for the fundamentals, memorize vocabulary. Then once you've memorized the vocabulary, memorize phrases for the vocabulary, get yourself into a situation where you're with native speakers who you can speak with and get input from them, and literally just get a magazine and sit with them and learn how to say, what is that? And then have them only speak in that language, and then get the words that you don't know and use the memory palaces that you now know how to use to memorize the words and phrases, and keep speaking. Speak, 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 speak. Blah, 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 blah. Don't stop every day. Even if you don't feel like it, do it. Very, very important. All right, Kirigami says, thank you, Dr. Anthony. I like that, Dr. Anthony. Thank you for this amazing session. This is the first time I've stayed for the whole session. Felt like I've achieved something phenomenal. Thanks for the inspiration. Well, I'm glad to hear that you feel like you've achieved something phenomenal. That's wonderful, and you all are inspiring to me as well, particularly those most active. So thank you for everyone. Thank you to everyone who's been active, asking questions. To the question that came earlier about memorizing textbooks, look, it's just incredibly simple. So if you were interested in that, go and look up the podcast that's already there on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast and listen to it. There's an infographic on that page. You can just search for it, magneticmemorymethod.com, and how to memorize a textbook, and it will be realistic. And that's what you need, is just a realistic method for doing it. So you're not trying to have it all, but you're having what you need there. Maricela says she was with a sick family member in the hospital. So you'll check the replay later. Well, Maricela, warm wishes for recovery for your loved one. Wish things were different there. I'll be thinking about you, and thanks for checking in. Really appreciate it. And so, before I picked up on Rosa's question, another question here from Captain Kid. So, what do you recommend for practice instead of apps? Thanks for that question, Captain Kid. I recommend that you figure out what it is that's going to improve your life. So in Rosa's case, if French is going to improve your life, focus on French. Now, that seems kind of abstract, right? What is going to improve your life? I don't know. You have to do that. And to help you, there's a previous live stream on how to create a vision statement for your memory. And I really, really hope that you will go through that and actually create a vision statement. Figure it out, right? So in various circumstances, what was going to improve my life? Well, being able to memorize the core terminology and the core ideas in philosophical books and critical theory books and so forth was what was going to improve my life. And getting up to speed with biblical Hebrew was what was going to improve my life. So that's what I focused on with the memory techniques. Now, I could have at that time, because I got into the memory techniques through card magic, I could have just used it for cards. And I was very, very tempted to do that. But I saw that you've got to focus. You've got to focus, and you've got to complete the goals. You've got to complete the things that you've started, right? And so that's what I did. I had the wherewithal to know that and continue. And so later in my life, German was what I needed, because I got a research grant. I was in Germany. I needed to learn German. I needed to be able to give lectures in German. So I focused on German. Lo and behold, I was able to give those lectures in German. It was amazing. It was the most amazing thing. I remember the first time I spoke in a movie presentation about The Fly in German, and I was just thinking, this is the most amazing thing in the world. I never would have thought that I'd be able to do this, and yet I did. And incredible what it does for your confidence, etc. But that was the thing at that time that was going to improve my life. Then later, just lots of stuff. I stuck with German for a long time and picked up things, quotes, different things. But I never memorize anything unless it follows that rule. Is this really going to improve my life? And by that, I mean, is it going to help me help others as well? And so most recently, and really for the last 2.5 years, more than 2.5 years now, I've focused on memorizing Sanskrit from a particular tradition to help clean my mind, to keep things sharp and crisp. And it's helped a lot, and I keep doing it. And when it no longer does it, I'll move on to something else. And Chinese. But the number one rule is practice with information that will improve your life. So how is that more practically described? Let's say you're learning a language. What are the 10 words you don't know that are going to accelerate your ability to speak that language most immediately. Memorize those, right? And for a lot of people in the beginning, those words will belong to about a pile of 850 words. I've got all of those and more accounted for with the Magnetic Memory Method vocabulary builder. And it's not just something I pulled out of nowhere. I worked with established language learning experts and polyglots to help put it together. And so you don't have to think too much about it. Just nail those words. Some of them are going to be a bit boring, tedious, like the days of the week, colors, etc. Just knock them down as quickly as possible so then you can constantly do this exercise. And the exercise is, what are the words that are going to, and phrases, but I always start with words and then I memorize a phrase for the word, right? What are the words and phrases that are going to improve my life in this language today? And then work on that. It takes a little bit of meta level work, but it's worth it. Speaking of meta level work, I got an extra copy of Ultra Learning by Scott Young, and I'm thinking of doing a giveaway. So make sure you're on my email list if you would like to possibly get this extra copy, because that'll go out to those who are on my email list. And you can register at magneticmarymethod.com or following one of the links that I put in the chat. And let's see. There it is again in the chat for you. Arturo is in the house. Good to see you all the way in Paris. Bonjour, comment ça va? But back to Captain Kidd. Practice with whatever is going to improve your life. I don't know what that will be. And apps are not practice. They're not practicing this technique. They really aren't. Although I'll give you some, if you're in the mastermind, I'll give you later this month a couple of ideas about what you might do there. All right, everybody. So in the absence of any further questions, let's hear from Rusiel Huertas with his tips that he found for making a memory palace better. I want to thank him so much for contributing this. And for those of you who stuck around, here's a little free memory training for you based on someone in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass and Mastermind world. And before we go, one last congratulations to James Gerwing, who you see on the screen here, for becoming the Canadian World Memory Champion. Very, very inspiring. All of you inspired me. Thank you so much for being here. And now I'll share the inspiration that I got from Rusiel. I love seeing people take action. He's going to show you inside of some of his memory journals. And if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing. Make sure you get that free course. And until we have a chance to speak again, keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. I have no experience on speech or making videos or even posting videos on social media, but here's one of my first tries. My name is Rusiel Huertas Muniz. I'm Puerto Rican. You're gonna notice that I have this pretty thick accent because my first language is Spanish, but most of you speak English, so I'm pretty good at English, hopefully. And I want to make this short video a feedback of the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. And I want to address 3 points. So the first one is that it helped me it actually helped me to understand what memory is. Back in the day, I was taking a lot of supplements and I'm researching weird stuff. I think I did the wrong research because I never found the magnetic memory method before or anything similar. And I was just looking for supplements, teas, or stuff that can help my memory to just magically remember everything. And with the magnetic memory method, obviously I figured out the solution, and that actually was pretty helpful. So that's another part of my life that changed thanks to the magnetic memory method, and I think Dr. Anthony Metivier, is the creativity. So I know it's part of the magnetic memory method and memorizing stuff, but once it became part of my mindset, I went I noticed that having conversation with people, I was more creative, and everything they say, I was just making this movie in my head, and that's actually was very helpful because it made conversations less boring. And I don't know if you're one of these person that you think, or at least my personal opinion, I used to find it easier to have conversations and less boring if I would drink beer or alcohol. And now it's not like that anymore. I try to avoid drinking as much as I can, and now I don't even need it for conversations. I find it very useful to use your creative thinking and use it for conversations as well. And if you want to try that, maybe you tried that already, or you know how to do it, and it's just me, but that was pretty helpful. It helped me a lot. And lastly, I want to talk about my memory palaces. I have my notebook here, and I want to show you just some of them. I have a list. I have the stones and the colors, and then I start making my palaces. So this one is just a road, and I just put the numbers because I remember what was over there, and I was a little bit lazy. I didn't want to do it. Pretty much all of them I do them the same way, like the rooms, the numbers, and as you can notice, I was trying to find the simplest way and the easiest way to do it. So what I did, just have the room. I remember what's in each location, but I'm just using the corner, the wall, the corner, the wall, the corner, and that's what I'm doing. Each palace. Until like after a few palaces, I got even more lazy. I didn't put the numbers because I know that it's gonna be 8. And the way I've used them, so this is an example of how I use them. Use the palace, and this is like a clock, like this is 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like I just go clockwise on the. It make it easier for me. I used to create a real journey or something, but then I figured out it was easier for me to just go clockwise on everything and go out. And then there's something that I figured out today. So my wife, she told me to go out, a birthday party for a kid like 2 years old, and I feel excited. I was like, oh yeah, it's time to use my name and faces palace. I wasn't like this before. I will try to avoid. I'm also pretty busy studying and try to stay home. But even if I'm not studying, I usually avoid it. But thanks to the magnetic memory method, I'm not like that anymore. And yeah, I went out, and before leaving, I was looking at my faces names memory palace, and I was like, you know what? I want to get even simpler. And I was just, how can I do it? And I figured out, and I did it today, and it worked for me. And if you want to try it, I'm gonna show you what I did. Just looking for a white page. So here's what I did. Just imagine, memory palace, and you have each room. So what I did, since I know that I'm using 8 stations on each rooms, the corner wall, like wall in the middle of the wall on the corners. I was thinking of something even simpler than that. So what I'm doing now is this. I just think on the macro station, and just each micro station is gonna have like this on the middle. And another way to remember it for me is the north, south, west, east, and then these guys over here. Yeah. So I go to the micro station. I go through the palace clockwise, and then I come here counterclockwise. So I'll start here, I mean, like, the first information that I want to store, I put it here, then here, then here, then here, and I go like this, like that. I did it today. Thank you. Overall, the magnetic memory method has been very useful. I'm currently taking 9 credits in 2 months. It's pretty hard, but I'll be done with one of the classes on 2 weeks. I'm glad of being part of this group. Thank you, Anthony Metivier, for the question and answers, for being so helpful here, and always answering comments and being active to helping us out. Well, thank you very much.